The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Silverton, Colorado, as Zeke Benson rode into town, his weathered face squinting against the harsh glare of the summer of 1878. At 32, he'd seen more of life than most men twice his age, making his fortune in silver mines before establishing the most prosperous cattle ranch in the territory. Despite his wealth, he remained a simple man, preferring honest work and straight talk to the pretensions that often came with success. Zeke dismounted his stallion outside the general store, tying the reins to the hitching post before dusting off his worn leather vest. He needed supplies for the ranch and figured the bustling mining town would have what he required. As he approached the store's entrance, the sound of cruel laughter caught his attention. A group of well-dressed women had gathered in a tight circle near the millinery shop, their voices rising with undisguised mockery. Curious, Zeke paused, his hand resting on the wooden railing of the store's porch. "Look at those pathetic Finley girls," a woman in an elaborate purple dress said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Wearing the same threadbare dresses they've had for 3 years. What else would you expect from the daughters of a failed miner?" Another replied, adjusting her expensive hat. "Their father drank himself to death chasing silver dreams, and now they're just begging for scraps." Zeke's jaw tightened as he looked beyond the gossiping women to see 2 young women standing rigidly by a wagon loaded with bundles of laundry. The taller one, perhaps 22, stood protectively beside her younger sister, who couldn't have been more than 19. Their dresses were indeed worn but meticulously clean, their postures dignified despite the humiliation being heaped upon them. "I heard they're taking in washing now," the first woman continued. "Imagine touching other people's dirty clothes. How disgusting." Without conscious thought, Zeke found himself moving toward the confrontation, his spurs jingling with each determined step. The gossiping women fell silent as his imposing figure approached, their smug expressions faltering. "Ladies," he said with exaggerated politeness, tipping his hat, "I couldn't help overhearing your conversation." His voice was calm, but steel ran beneath his words. "I believe you're mistaken about the Finley sisters." The older sister lifted her chin, her green eyes flashing with a fierce pride that caught Zeke off guard. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a simple bun, revealing a face that, despite its weariness, possessed a natural beauty that needed no enhancement. "We don't need your defense, sir," she said evenly. "We're quite accustomed to the opinions of Silverton's finest." Zeke smiled, admiring her spirit. "I wasn't defending you, Miss Finley. I was merely correcting these ladies' misperception." He turned back to the now uncomfortable group of women. "You see, what you mistake for poverty is actually something much more valuable: dignity, hard work, and integrity. In my book, that makes these ladies the richest people in town." The younger sister, her face a softer, more delicate version of her sister's, looked up at Zeke with wide blue eyes. "Thank you, sir, but Nora's right. We can handle ourselves." "I don't doubt it," Zeke replied, then turned back to the gossiping women. "Ladies, I'm looking to hire help at my ranch, specifically someone to manage the household and cook for my ranch hands. I've been searching for honest, hardworking people which seem to be in short supply in these parts." The women shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "Miss Finley," Zeke continued, addressing Nora directly, "I'm offering you and your sister positions at the Double B Ranch, fair wages, private quarters, and the respect you deserve." He glanced meaningfully at the group of women. "Unless you prefer to continue being the subject of idle gossip in town." Nora Finley studied him with suspicious eyes. "Why would you offer such a thing to strangers, Mr. Benson, Zeke Benson?" He removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "And I'm offering because I need help and you need work. Nothing more complicated than that." The younger sister tugged at Nora's sleeve. "We should consider it, Nora. The washing barely pays enough for food." Nora hesitated, her eyes assessing Zeke with a wariness born of hard experience. "We don't accept charity, Mr. Benson." "Good," Zeke replied firmly, "because I'm not offering any. I'm offering honest work for honest pay. My ranch is 15 miles east of town. 25 men working cattle, and not one of them can cook worth a damn, myself included. This earned a small smile from the younger sister. I'll pay $30 a month each, plus room and board. The gossiping women gasped at the generous offer. $30 was more than most miners made, and he was offering it to each sister. $60 a month. Nora whispered, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. That's right, Zeke confirmed. You can start tomorrow if you like. I'll send a wagon for you and your belongings. The younger sister could no longer contain herself. We accept, don't we, Nora? Nora hesitated, then nodded slowly. We accept, Mr. Benson, but understand this: we work for our keep. We're not looking for a savior. Zeke smiled, impressed by her spirit. I never thought you were, Miss Finley. The Double B needs capable hands, not damsels in distress. He turned to face the now silent group of gossiping women. Ladies, always a pleasure. If you'll excuse me, I have supplies to buy before heading back to the ranch. As he walked away, Zeke heard one of the women mutter, $30 a month for laundry girls. The man's lost his mind. He smiled to himself. Perhaps he had. But something about the fierce pride in Nora Finley's eyes told him he'd just made the best business decision of his life. True to his word, Zeke sent a wagon the following morning. The driver, an elderly ranch hand named Chester, arrived at the small, dilapidated cabin the sisters rented on the outskirts of town just as the sun was rising. Mr. Benson sent me to fetch you ladies, Chester said, tipping his worn hat. Got room for whatever you want to bring. Nora and her sister, Nadine, had spent the previous evening packing their meager belongings. 2 trunks contained everything they owned in the world: clothes, their mother's china teapot, their father's Bible, and a few precious books. Is it far? Nadine asked as Chester loaded their trunks onto the wagon. About 3 hours at wagon pace, Chester replied. Pretty country, though, you'll see. Nora looked back at the cabin that had been their home for the past 2 years. After their father's death, they'd been forced to sell their family home to pay his debts, moving into this drafty one-room structure that leaked when it rained and offered little protection against the Colorado winters. We're making the right choice, Nora, Nadine said softly, reading her sister's expression. There's nothing for us here but memories and hardship. Nora nodded, squeezing her sister's hand. I know, I just wish we had more choices than depending on the charity of a stranger. Mr. Benson don't do charity, miss, Chester interjected, having overheard. He's the most straightforward man I ever worked for. If he's offering you a job, it's because he needs the work done. This reassurance helped settle Nora's unease as they climbed onto the wagon and began the journey to the Double B Ranch. The road took them through breathtaking mountain scenery, past rushing streams and meadows bursting with summer wildflowers. Despite her apprehension, Nora found herself enchanted by the beauty of the land. How long have you worked for Mr. Benson? She asked Chester. Going on 8 years now, the old cowboy replied. Was with him when he first bought the land. Wasn't much more than scrub and rock back then. You should have seen the other ranchers laughing at him, Chester chuckled. Ain't laughing now. Double B runs the finest herd of Herefords in the territory. He built it himself, Nadine asked, impressed. Every fence post and corral, Chester confirmed. Man works harder than any 3 cowboys put together. Smart, too. Figured out ways to irrigate land others thought was useless. As they crested a hill, the Double B Ranch came into view, and both sisters gasped. A sprawling main house built of sturdy logs and stone dominated the property, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Nearby stood a bunkhouse, barn, and various outbuildings, all well-maintained. Fenced pastures stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with red and white Hereford cattle. It's beautiful, Nadine whispered. Even Nora had to admit it was impressive. She'd expected something more rustic, perhaps a simple ranch house and sparse amenities. This looked like a small kingdom. Chester guided the wagon to the main house, where Zeke Benson stood waiting on the porch. He looked different from yesterday, less the town visitor and more the working rancher in his flannel shirt and worn denims. Yet something about him still commanded respect. Welcome to the Double B, he said, helping first Nadine and then Nora down from the wagon. His hand was warm and calloused, his grip strong but gentle. I hope the journey wasn't too tiring. Not at all, Nadine replied enthusiastically. The scenery was magnificent. Zeke smiled at her enthusiasm. Chester, take their trunks to the east wing, please. He turned back to the sisters. I thought you might like your own rooms connected by a sitting area. The east wing has 3 rooms that should suit you well. Nora was taken aback by this consideration. That's very generous, Mr. Benson. We expected much humbler accommodations. This is your home now, Zeke said simply. At least for as long as you choose to stay, you should be comfortable. He gestured toward the door. Let me show you around. The interior of the ranch house was surprisingly refined. Polished wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and tasteful decorations created a welcoming atmosphere. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, with mounted antlers and a painting of mountain scenery above the mantel. This is the main living area, Zeke explained. Through there is the dining room, which seats 20 when necessary. The kitchen is beyond that'll be your domain, though I warn you it needs organization. My attempts at arranging it have been less than successful. He led them through to a large, well-equipped kitchen with a massive cast iron stove, ample counter space, and a pantry stocked with provisions. The cookhouse for the ranch hands is attached, he continued, pointing to a door. They take breakfast at dawn, lunch at noon, and dinner at sunset. I usually eat separately unless there's business to discuss. Nora nodded, mentally calculating what would be needed to prepare meals for so many men. It was a challenge, but not an impossible one. Her mother had taught her well. And now, your quarters, Zeke said, leading them down a hallway to the east wing of the house. True to his word, he showed them 3 connected rooms, 2 bedrooms flanking a small but pleasant sitting room with windows overlooking a garden. These are lovely, Nadine exclaimed, running her hand over the quilt on one of the beds. They were my mother's rooms, Zeke said quietly. She passed 3 years ago. I think she'd approve of them being used again. Nora felt a sudden connection to this man she barely knew. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Benson. We lost our mother 5 years ago. Zeke, please, he corrected gently. And I'm sorry for your loss as well. It's never easy. An awkward silence fell, broken when Chester arrived with their trunks. Zeke cleared his throat. I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 6 in the main house. The men have already eaten, so it'll just be the 3 of us. Tomorrow we can discuss duties and expectations. After he left, Nadine threw herself onto one of the beds with a delighted laugh. Nora, can you believe this? Our own rooms, and did you see that kitchen? Mother would have loved it. Nora sat more sedately on the edge of the other bed. It is nice, she admitted. Almost too nice. I'm waiting for the catch. Must there be one? Nadine asked, sitting up. Maybe Mr. Benson Zeke is simply a good man offering fair work. Men like that are rare, Nadine, Nora replied, thinking of their father and his broken promises. Especially men with money and power. Well, I think he's wonderful, Nadine declared, moving to unpack her trunk. And handsome too, don't you think? Those blue eyes and that little bit of silver in his hair. Nadine, Nora scolded, though she couldn't deny noticing the same features herself. We're here to work, not to moon over our employer. Nadine just grinned, pulling out their mother's teapot and placing it on a small table between their rooms. There, already feels like home. Despite her reservations, Nora had to admit that the Double B offered them security they hadn't known since before their father's death. If the price was simply honest work, perhaps they had found a stroke of luck at last. Dinner that evening was a revelation. Zeke had prepared a simple meal of beefsteak, potatoes, and greens from the garden, and while it wasn't fancy, it was hearty and well cooked. This is delicious, Nadine said, taking a second helping of potatoes. You're a better cook than you admitted, Zeke. He laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the dining room. This is the extent of my skills, I'm afraid. Steak, potatoes, and coffee. The men are sick to death of it. Well, starting tomorrow, they'll have more variety, Nora promised. I make an excellent stew, and Nadine's biscuits are renowned in Silverton. We're renowned, Nadine corrected sadly. Before people decided we weren't worth knowing anymore, Zeke's expression hardened. Small minds make for cruel tongues. Success is the best revenge, though. In a year, those same women will be claiming they always knew you were destined for better things. Nora studied him across the table. You speak from experience, Zeke nodded, cutting another piece of steak. When I came to Colorado, I had nothing but the clothes on my back and a dream of making something of myself. Worked the mines for 5 years, living on beans and saving every penny. When I bought this land, everyone said I was a fool. Now they call me sir and ask for loans. And are you happy?" Nora asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Zeke considered her question with surprising seriousness. "I'm satisfied with what I've built. Happiness is a more complicated matter." He cleared his throat. "But enough about me. Tell me about yourselves." Chester mentioned your father was a miner. The sisters exchanged glances before Nora answered. "Yes, he came to Silverton chasing silver, like so many others. Had some success at first, enough to build us a nice house and give us a comfortable life. But the vein ran dry, and rather than accept it, he kept digging, borrowing money to keep going. He started drinking," Nadine added softly. "After Mother died, said it helped him see clearer where the silver might be. But all it did was cloud his judgment," Nora continued, her voice tight with old pain. "He died 2 years ago, fell down a mine shaft after a night of heavy drinking, left us with nothing but debts." "I'm sorry," Zeke said, his voice genuinely sympathetic. "That's a heavy burden for 2 young women to bear." "We managed," Nora replied with simple dignity. "The house sold for enough to pay most of the debts. We took in washing, mending, whatever work we could find. Nora taught reading to miners' children too," Nadine added proudly. "She's very educated. Our mother insisted on it." Nora flushed. "Just basic education, nothing special." "Can you read?" Zeke asked abruptly. "Of course," Nora replied, surprised by the question. "Right? Do figures?" "Yes to both. Why do you ask?" Zeke smiled. "Because in addition to cooking, I could use help with the ranch accounts. My foreman tries, but numbers aren't his strong suit. Would you be willing to take that on as well? I'd adjust your wages accordingly." Nora was stunned by the offer. Yes, I could do that." "Excellent." Zeke stood, collecting the empty plates. "Now, let me show you one more thing before it gets too dark." He led them outside and around to the back of the house, where a fenced garden grew lush with vegetables and herbs. Beyond it stood an orchard of apple and pear trees, heavy with nearly ripe fruit. "The garden is yours to use as you see fit," he explained. "My mother started it, and I've tried to maintain it, but it needs a woman's touch. There's a henhouse beyond the orchard with 20 laying hens and a dairy cow named Buttercup who's gentle as a lamb." Nadine clapped her hands in delight. "Fresh eggs and milk, and look at those tomatoes." Even Nora was impressed. "This is wonderful, Zeke. Thank you for showing us." In the golden light of sunset, with the mountains rising majestically in the distance and the sweet scent of the garden surrounding them, Nora felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, they had found not just employment but a home. Over the following weeks, the Finley sisters settled into life at the Double B Ranch. Nadine thrived in the kitchen, her natural talent for cooking winning over the ranch hands, who began looking forward to meals rather than simply enduring them. She also took charge of the garden, spending hours tending the vegetables and planning future expansions. Nora, meanwhile, brought order to the ranch's accounts, discovering a talent for business that surprised even herself. She created a systematic ledger that tracked every expense and profit, giving Zeke a clearer picture of the ranch's financial health than he'd ever had before. "This is remarkable," he told her one evening as they sat in his study reviewing the monthly figures. "You've identified 3 areas where we're losing money unnecessarily." Nora nodded, pointing to a column in her careful handwriting. "The feed supplier in Silverton is charging you 20% more than the one in Durango, and your cattle broker is taking a larger commission than is standard." Zeke leaned back in his chair, studying her with newfound respect. "How did you learn all this?" "I listened when my father discussed business," Nora explained, "and I've been reading your old contracts and comparing them with current rates in the newspapers." "Impressive," Zeke murmured. "You're saving me more than I'm paying you." Nora smiled, pleased by his appreciation. "Then perhaps we should discuss a raise." Zeke laughed, a rich sound that had become increasingly familiar around the ranch. "Shrewd negotiator, too. You're full of surprises, Nora Finley." As summer gave way to fall, the relationship between Zeke and Nora evolved from employer and employee to something closer to partnership. He began consulting her on business decisions, valuing her practical insight and careful analysis. For her part, Nora found herself looking forward to their evening discussions, drawn to his intelligence and unwavering integrity. One crisp October afternoon, Zeke invited the sisters to join him for a ride to the high pastures where the cattle would soon be brought down for the winter. "I want to show you the full extent of the Double B," he explained as they set out, the leaves of the aspen trees shimmering gold against the blue Colorado sky. Nadine rode beside Chester, who had taken the younger sister under his wing, teaching her to ride and sharing stories of his younger days as a Texas Ranger. Nora rode alongside Zeke, comfortable now on the gentle mare he had assigned to her. "It's beautiful country," Nora observed as they climbed a ridge overlooking the valley. Below them, the ranch buildings looked like toys, surrounded by the patchwork of fields and pastures. "It is," Zeke agreed, his eyes scanning the horizon with evident pride. "When I first saw this land, I knew it was special. Everyone said I was crazy to buy it, too remote, too rugged, but I could see what it could become." "You were right," Nora said softly. "You've built something remarkable here." Zeke turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "We all need something to build, don't we? Something that's ours." The conversation lingered in Nora's mind that night as she lay in bed. What was she building? For years, her only goal had been survival, keeping herself and Nadine fed and sheltered. Now, for the first time, she allowed herself to think beyond mere existence to what she truly wanted from life. The answer came with surprising clarity. She wanted to belong somewhere, to build something lasting. And increasingly, she couldn't imagine doing that anywhere but the Double B. As fall deepened into winter, the ranch settled into a different rhythm. The cattle were brought down from the high pastures, the bunkhouse stove burned constantly, and evenings were spent indoors. Nadine organized a Thanksgiving feast that brought together the entire ranch, turning the dining room into a place of warmth and celebration. "I've never seen the men so happy," Zeke commented to Nora as they stood by the fireplace, watching Nadine lead a group in singing carols after dinner. "You and your sister have transformed this place." "They're good men," Nora replied. "They just needed someone to notice them as individuals, not just hands." Zeke studied her face in the firelight. "You notice everything, don't you? It's a rare quality." Nora felt herself blush under his intense gaze. "Not everything," she murmured. "What do you miss?" he asked, stepping closer. Before she could answer, Chester called for Zeke's attention regarding a concern about one of the pregnant mares. The moment passed, but the question lingered between them. December brought heavy snows that blanketed the ranch in pristine white. With outdoor work limited, Zeke spent more time in the main house, often joining the sisters for meals and evening activities. Nadine had discovered a chess set and insisted on learning the game, though her impatient nature made her a poor player. "Your move," Zeke said one evening as they sat before the fire, the chessboard between them. Nadine had already retired, complaining good-naturedly about their slow pace. Nora studied the board, considering her options. "You're trying to trap my queen," Zeke smiled. "You're getting better at seeing my strategies." "I'm getting better at seeing a lot of things," Nora replied, moving her bishop to block his attack. She glanced up to find him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. "Nora," he began, then hesitated. "These past months, having you and Nadine here, it's changed things." "For the better, I hope," she said softly, "more than you know." He reached across the chessboard to take her hand. "I've been alone a long time, built walls around myself without even realizing it. You've somehow found your way through them." Nora's breath caught. A sudden pounding on the front door interrupted them. Zeke released her hand with obvious reluctance and went to answer it. One of the ranch hands stood there, snow covering his hat and shoulders. "Sorry to disturb you, boss, but Johnson's wife is having the baby and there's complications. Need to get the doctor from town." "Saddle my horse," Zeke ordered, already reaching for his coat. "Nora, I have to go. Silverton's doctor is the nearest and the snow's too deep for a wagon." "Of course," Nora said, standing. "Be careful, the pass will be treacherous at night." He paused at the door, looking back at her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "We'll finish our conversation when I return." The storm worsened overnight, turning into a full blizzard that howled around the ranch house. Nora paced anxiously, watching the swirling snow through the windows and praying for Zeke's safe return. Nadine tried to distract her with preparations for Christmas, but Nora's thoughts remained with the man battling the elements to save a mother and child. 3 days passed with no word. The ranch hands maintained operations under Chester's direction, but concern was evident in their faces. On the morning of the 4th day, just as Nora was preparing to organize a search party, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. She rushed to the door to find Zeke dismounting, his face haggard with exhaustion but breaking into a smile at the sight of her. "You're safe," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Barely," he admitted, stomping snow from his boots as he entered. Trail was completely obscured. Had to trust the horse to find the way home. "And Mrs. Johnson, the baby, both fine," Zeke said, shrugging off his snow-covered coat. "A healthy boy. The doctor arrived in time." Nadine appeared from the kitchen, exclaiming over Zeke's frozen state and rushing to prepare hot coffee and food. As she bustled about, Zeke caught Nora's hand. "I had a lot of time to think, trapped in that blizzard," he said quietly. "About what matters, about what I want." Nora's heart thundered in her chest. "And what did you decide?" "That life is too short and too precious to waste. That I've found someone I never expected." His blue eyes held her steadily. "I love you, Nora Finley. I think I have since that first day in Silverton when you stood so proudly despite everything." Tears welled in Nora's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "But I was afraid it was too soon, that you might see me as just an employee." That he silenced her doubts with a kiss, gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that left no room for uncertainty. When they finally broke apart, Nora saw Nadine standing in the doorway, a delighted grin on her face. "Well, it's about time," the younger sister declared. "I was beginning to think you were both blind," Zeke laughed, keeping his arm around Nora's waist. "Not blind, just cautious, but no more." He turned to face Nora fully. "Marry me, not because you need security or because I need help with the ranch. Marry me because we're better together than apart, because I love you and I want to build a life with you." "Yes," Nora said without hesitation. "Yes, with all my heart." They were married on Christmas Day, 1878, in the main room of the ranch house, decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. The ranch hands served as witnesses, and Chester, who it turned out had been a justice of the peace in his younger days, performed the ceremony. Nadine stood beside her sister, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I, Zeke Benson, take you, Nora Finley, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Zeke recited, his voice strong and sure as he placed a simple gold band on her finger. "To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Nora's voice trembled slightly as she repeated the vows, still scarcely able to believe that life had brought her to this moment of perfect happiness. "By the authority vested in me by the territory of Colorado," Chester proclaimed gruffly, blinking back tears of his own, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Zeke drew her close, his kiss a promise of all the years to come. Around them, the ranch hands cheered and whistled. Nadine laughed through her tears, and outside, the sun broke through the clouds to cast golden light across the snow-covered land of the Double B Ranch. Later that evening, as they stood on the porch watching the stars emerge in the clear winter sky, Zeke wrapped his arms around Nora from behind, resting his chin on her head. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Completely," she replied, leaning back against his strong chest. "When I think of where Nadine and I were just months ago and where we are now." "You were never poor," Zeke said, echoing his words from their first meeting. "You had what mattered: courage, integrity, love for each other. That's true wealth." "And now we have this too," Nora said, gesturing to the ranch spread out before them, peaceful under its blanket of snow. "A home, a future, our future," Zeke agreed. "The Double B is yours now too, you know, equal partners in everything." Nora turned in his arms to face him. "I never dreamed of finding someone like you, someone who sees me as I am and values what I can offer." "You're the strongest, smartest, most beautiful woman I've ever known," Zeke said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm the fortunate one." As they sealed this declaration with another kiss, Nora knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just security or employment, but her heart's true home. From the moment Zeke Benson had stood up for two poor sisters in Silverton, their lives had been on a path to this perfect union, a love built on respect, admiration, and the shared vision of a future filled with promise. In the years that followed, the Double B Ranch prospered beyond anyone's expectations. Under Nora's careful financial management and Zeke's visionary leadership, they expanded their holdings, introduced new breeding stock, and became one of the most successful cattle operations in Colorado. Nadine eventually married the town doctor who had saved Mrs. Johnson and her baby, though she insisted on building their home on Double B land, unwilling to be separated from her sister and the ranch she had come to love. And when the society ladies of Silverton came calling, as they inevitably did once the Benson wealth and influence became impossible to ignore, Nora received them with perfect grace and no hint of resentment. She had no need for petty triumphs or revenge. She had found something far more valuable, a love that had seen past circumstance to the true worth within, a love that had made her rich beyond measure.